Okay, hello. We're going to be doing some tarot readings and looking at the current astrology, at least hopefully. I've had to restart the stream twice so far, so let's see if third time's a charm. Alright, so are we connected?
Are we connected?
Yes, we are. At least for now. Oh shit. I forgot to delete the previous stream, so I guess I'm gonna do that now. Alright, let's see here. Give me a few moments, please. Alright, I guess that works. Okay, let's try this again. Live tarot readings and looking at the current and upcoming astrology. Okay, so far so good. Alright, as long as things continue to work, then we can in fact do this tonight. Now I'm going to paste the donation link in the chat for those who want a tarot or astrology reading. I'll load up the astrological data, and we're going to dive into it. Okay, so first of all, as usual, in case you're unaware, we're doing live tarot readings for $8, astrology readings, birth chart readings / consultations for $20. Those cost more because they take a lot longer. But with those, I'll also include a tarot reading if someone wants. But tarot readings are just $8. You can pay me through PayPal or Super Chat, and I'll be happy to give you a reading on any subject of your choice. And then between readings, we will be looking at the current astrology, as we typically do when the title is what it is for this stream. So that is what we're going to get into right now, and we'll just see what happens from there. So let's see here. It is currently 9 p.m. on July 31st, 2019. And that is Eastern time. And I'm now going to go over the current astrological energy, with a focus mainly on the next couple of days to the next couple of weeks. So let's see. this is quite the opportune time to do a stream like this, because this is in fact on the evening of a new moon that will perfect in just a little over 2 more hours. In fact, I believe the exact time is 11:11 p.m. Interestingly enough, if I'm not mistaken, let me double check that. Yes, it is at 11:11 p.m. tonight, July 31st. There is a new moon in the sign of Leo. So a whole new cycle begins, and as always, a new moon is the perfect time for planting your intentions or planting the seeds of your intentions. You know, imagining what you want to create and that sort of thing. Whatever you do now, especially if you do it with intention, will carry through the entire next lunar cycle. So the next 28 days, basically. So that's, of course, what we have. And then just with the sun and moon being in Leo, as well as Venus, that just recently moved into Leo 4 days ago, and Mars that has been in Leo for a little while, we have, generally speaking, a strong dose of that Leonine energy right now. Things are, especially compared to the kind of vibe that we were facing back in July and June, especially, there's a much more optimistic vibe right now. Things are, in general, opening up more. There's more excitement. There's more like, oh, now there are new things. Now we don't have to feel so weighed down as we did, because when we had these various planets moving through Cancer, and they were basically one by one opposing the ongoing Saturn-Pluto conjunction, that was stressful as hell. And again, that was mainly in June, although we saw some difficulties in July as well. But well, this month I'm speaking like it's already August, but it will be in less than 3 hours. But yeah, basically it's like, okay, finally there's a light, or there's like some hope, there's some optimism, some kind of distant, or maybe now even not so distant horizon to focus upon. And I know that might sound more like Sagittarius energy, but there's good reason for that, because these various planets that have moved into Leo are trining one by one Jupiter in Sagittarius. So they are powerfully connecting to that energy. So it's a far more optimistic vibe, first of all. And of course, there's more to it than that, but we'll get into that little by little. Let's see, where should we go next? So Mercury, which has been retrograde for the past few weeks, at last turns direct tonight, actually. And the exact time of that is 11:58 p.m. Eastern Time, July 31st, obviously. So it's very interesting that on the exact date of the new moon, which indicates a new cycle and like moving forward, we also have Mercury stationing direct, which is also indicative of moving forward. Though technically, yes, it is true. Really, you need to wait until Mercury is out of its retrograde shadow before you are completely all in the clear. And that won't happen until August 15th, I believe it was. I'd have to look it up, but it's either August 14th or 15th. But that's when we'll completely be in the clear with the Mercury retrograde shadow. And then things will truly move forward, especially in like a more intellectual or communicative sense, since we're talking Mercury. But the fact that it's stationing direct tonight on the new moon is nevertheless very interesting and very telling, very indicative of this is the time for new beginnings. So let's see. And actually, on that note, the funny thing about that too, is that it goes even further, since the full moon, let me pull it up here. The full moon is on August 15th, right around the exact time that Mercury moves out of its retrograde shadow. So there seems to be, perhaps you could say, an interesting connection between this particular lunar cycle and Mercury. Now, as for the deeper meanings of what that might mean, I'm not even sure, in all honesty, but it's something that I can observe. So let's see what else we have here. I apologize if I seem a little off tonight. If I seem a little off tonight, it's because I am off tonight. So, yeah, but the show must go on, I guess. So let's see. Where should we go next? It's interesting that we have basically all of the inner planets / personal planets moving more or less together right now. Because while it is true that typically Mercury and Venus move more or less alongside the sun because of the patternings of the Earth's rotation, and those two planets are within the orbit of Earth in ways that are, I don't know, hard for me to explain, to put into words. But because of that, basically, we typically do, yes, have Mercury and Venus traveling alongside the sun. But what we don't typically have is Mars traveling alongside the sun. And that's what's happening right now. Mars being, of course, outside of Earth's orbit. For those of you who don't know, it goes Mercury, Venus, Earth, then Mars, and then on it goes. But with Mars being just outside of Earth's orbit, even though it's still an inner planet, Mars tends to be more all over the place and is not always going to travel alongside the sun, or in such close proximity to the sun as Mercury and Venus do from Earth's perspective. But right now, we have Venus at 4 degrees of Leo, the moon and the sun respectively at 7 and 8 degrees of Leo, which is strangely symbolic in and of itself. Consider yourself smart if you understand that reference, or maybe just very clever, I don't know. And Mars at 19 of Leo. So we have that proximity. It's not common that we have, this kind of planetary configuration in which so many planets are traveling together, because it doesn't end there. Mercury, as I mentioned earlier, at 23, almost 24 of Cancer, is, before we know it, and I'll get into that here in a bit, the exact time, going to enter Leo as well. So we're going to have Mercury, Venus, the sun, and Mars all in Leo. And of course, right now, we have the moon in Leo. It's a new moon in Leo. So, I mean, that's a lot of Leo energy. Like, I could go through and explain, like, okay, this is what it means for each individual planet in Leo, but just to simplify it for now, maybe we can get into more specifics later. That's what we have, a lot of that Leo energy of, like, oh, it's the middle of summer. Leo is the sign that occupies the middle part of the season of summer. So it's a time of great fun. It's a time to really be bold and get out there. It's a fire sign indicating let's act, let's do, Leo is the quintessential summer fun energy. And of course, I know it's only summer in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, it is winter right now, but just saying, that is typical Leo energy. Now, let me see if I can sort of quickly find out, hang on, it should be on my screen somewhere, when Mercury enters Leo specifically. Okay, it's not there. Hang on. Here it is. Mercury will join the other planets in Leo August 11th at 3:43 p.m. Eastern Time, and our thoughts will go from being very self-protective and self-contained and emotional and moody and melancholy, perhaps in Cancer, back into Leo, or back into that Leo energy where Mercury was a few weeks ago before turning retrograde. And our thoughts will again become far more expressive and bold and dramatic and fun-loving and let's act on things and that sort of thing. So that is what we have there. Let's see what else is going on right now. Hello there, Star Child. Welcome to the stream. So another interesting thing about the astrology this month is that since the inner planets are all pretty much traveling together, they are not aspecting each other. They are only forming aspects to the outer planets, and we're including Jupiter and Saturn in this case. They're only forming aspects to the outer planets and, of course, to Chiron and stuff like that, other objects that are often tracked in astrology. So to really get a feel for things in that sense, we have to look at the outer planets that they're aspecting. Now, right now, as I mentioned, we're on this eve of a new moon. This new moon in Leo is square to Uranus at 6 degrees of Taurus, which I believe is getting ready to go retrograde. Let me see if, in about a week and a half, Uranus will go retrograde. Not that that's hugely important, but anyway. So this new moon in Leo being square to Uranus is creating a significant amount of tension right now. Could be an amount of nervous restlessness because a square is automatically indicative of conflict or even tension, you could say. And Uranus having such a strong connection to the mind and mental activity and the element of air, when we're looking at difficult aspects to Uranus, a lot of times, at least my interpretation, is a sort of nervous restlessness, And if we were to just look at, say, the moon square to Uranus, that would be on a very basic fundamental level, the emotions, our collective emotions, in conflict with that Uranian energy. So in this case, again, I would say nervous restlessness. But if you really want to, if you really want to simplify it further, Uranus would be more like the aspect of us that is weird, unique, different, revolutionary, impulsive, sudden, shocking, unexpected, genius, perhaps, that sort of thing. Let's see, what else can we talk about here? And then, of course, if you wanted to break down the Sun square to Uranus aspect, that, again, on a very, very basic fundamental level, you could say that the Sun square to Uranus is like the ego or sense of self in conflict with that Uranian energy, one's uniqueness, individuality, etc., etc. So it's a new moon that has a certain amount of perhaps restlessness to it, even though there's a certain sense of optimism with it being in Leo and also not far from Venus, basically conjunct Venus in Leo as well. We have that Uranian restlessness, I would say. So let's see what else. So indeed, it is true that despite that tension, Venus is there at 4 degrees, almost 5 degrees of Leo. And so not far from this new moon at all, which occurs at 8 degrees of Leo. Adding an element, certainly, of blessing to everything, or blessings to everything, sweetness, deliciousness, harmony. Let's work together. Let's, seek out love or be more loving, that sort of thing, especially when it's in the sign of Leo. Leo makes me think of like the sun, which rules it, and how the sun just sort of like boldly and lovingly shines no matter what the reception or lack thereof is on part of those that the sun shines on. So it's like the sun is just so overwhelmingly loving and overwhelming with being what it is, like radiating that which it is, that, it doesn't matter if you're a happy person or a depressed person. It doesn't matter even if there's a cloudy sky or a clear sky. Even if there's a cloudy sky, behind those clouds, the sun is still shining just the same. The sun just shines. And so I tend to think of that like with that Leo energy, that the sun rules. And I think, yeah, that's really that Leo energy. It just shines no matter what's going on. And especially with Venus, the planet of love, connecting to that Leo energy, being where the new moon is. There's certainly a lot of that happening right now. So that's very good. And then furthermore, this new moon is trying to Chiron. So there's an element of healing to it. There's an element maybe of forgiveness to this new moon. Chiron is the wounded healer, the object that represents the aspect of ourselves that heals the wounds in others that are a match to the wounds that we have, in an effort to help heal the wounds that we have. I always try to fit that into one sentence, and it often makes it sound like a bit much at once, but there you have it. So let's see. Another key element here to mention perhaps would be as Mars continues its transit through Leo. Mars is a fire planet. Leo's a fire sign, even though Mars is at home in Aries and Scorpio. Mars is still, I would say, highly resonant with the energy of Leo, since they're both of the element of fire primarily. So Mars in Leo is very impulsive. That's one thing that comes to mind. So there's much more impulsive energy, much more willingness to act on what excites us, on what we want to do, on what is fun for us, at this time, with, again, Leo being such a fun-loving sign. And in fact, I've noticed that in my own personal life. Like, I almost feel like a lot of times these days, even though I guess my natural instincts as a Capricorn are to want to try to work hard and like stick to something consistent, I keep finding myself thinking like, well, maybe I should just say screw all this and go do something super fun all day or whatever. Not that this isn't fun. This is plenty of fun. I follow my excitement. That's why I do it. It's just that, sometimes I feel like I prefer to just shut myself in my room and play a video game all day when I'm really not, quote unquote, supposed to be doing that. But so maybe maybe that could be a bit of a double-edged sword. I don't know. This like Mars and Leo energy, or all this high concentration of Leo energy that we have right now, as it is, I don't know. But regardless, that is an element to it, that Mars and Leo being very impulsive. And of course, there's more to it than that. But I don't want to get deep into that right now because there's other stuff I want to talk about first. So another issue with Mars and Leo. However, not relating to that exactly, but is the quincunx to Neptune that just perfected a little over a day ago. And so Mars quincunx Neptune, that's like the aspect of us that wants to take action and do things and be impulsive and all that, in a frustrating connection to the aspect of us that is about spirituality, the imagination, dreams, illusions, creativity, that sort of thing. So whenever Mars forms a difficult aspect to Neptune, and now that I think about it, I think I personally have been feeling this like all day. It's like, so Mars wants to move and fight and, like push forward and everything. That's what Mars is all about. But Neptune being confusing and mysterious and foggy and, nebulous and difficult to discern. When Mars forms a difficult aspect to Neptune, it's like it wants to fire away, but it doesn't know what to fire at, Mars in a difficult aspect to Neptune is like a moving target, or a target that is shrouded in mist or fog, and like you can't see what you're aiming at. And so it's like you want to keep pushing forward, but you don't know what direction to even go in. So basically all of humanity is experiencing that collectively, more or less right now. I suppose it could also tie into maybe some spiritual concerns with Neptune's relationship to spirituality, especially like maybe questioning one's power of belief or one's certainty in what they believe. Because if/when Mars forms a harmonious aspect with Neptune, then we're talking more like the power of belief. We could also say this with Mars Jupiter, because Jupiter is very much all about beliefs. Then we're talking, the power of belief and acting on faith and stuff like that. Well, it is my astrological theory that when Mars forms a difficult aspect to Neptune, then it's like, well, I would normally act on faith in this situation, but suddenly I don't quite feel the faith that I normally do in my own abilities or in what I'm doing or whatever the case may be. And it's like, now I'm questioning, like, do I have the power to do this? That sort of thing. So that is a bit of a challenge going on right now. But fortunately, that aspect perfected a day ago, and so it is fading now. But I personally, I think I'm sure as hell still feeling it. But of course, that's going to vary from person to person. Some people are such masters, I swear they could harmonize virtually any astrological aspect, and it doesn't have to be challenging for them at all, or very little, if at all. So let's see. What else do we have here? If this gets a bit slow-paced at times, it's because I feel like going at a slow pace at times. So another interesting thing that I can pick out here is, so with this recent Mercury retrograde, Mercury backed up all the way to 23 degrees of Cancer. And that put it, interestingly enough, like almost on axis again with the opposition to the ongoing Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which is basically what caused us so much of the hell that I'm sure so many of us noticed that we went through in June and also to some extent perhaps July. Hey there, Stitch It, and welcome to the stream. So, it was these various aspects, different planets, one by one, opposing the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that caused us such hell. Well, that's virtually completely gone by now, except Mercury has backed up to almost, but not quite, that point. And so it may be that, at least the way that I would theorize about this, that I would interpret this, at least on a theoretical level, is there may be a sense of we're almost encountering the kind of challenges that we encountered back in June, primarily, especially in a mental sense, but not quite. It's almost like, how do I say this? Moving towards the edge of a cliff or a precipice, but then stopping just before you fall off. It's like stopping just before you fall off to your tragic death, or at least a very scary fall, and then pulling yourself back just in time. That sort of thing. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, Mercury stations direct tonight in just a couple of hours. So yeah, there may be a bit of like scary difficulty right now. Like, oh, are we going to return to the hell of June or whatever? But fortunately, the astrology does not indicate that. It indicates improvement and moving forward. Also, okay, this is weird. And I don't know if the view counter is just lying to me, but seems like people keep coming in here and then leaving right after. Like, they'll say hi and then they leave. Again, I apologize. Maybe the view counter is just lying to me. Like, I apologize if I'm wrong and you're still here. But yeah, I don't understand why that is. But well, I guess we'll have to continue just the same. I mean, the title says live tarot readings and current astrology, and we're talking about the current astrology here. So I don't know. Are people expecting something different? I have no idea. But anyway, whatever. Let's see. Although if people were expecting something different, why say hi and then leave? That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, where should we go next? Let's just see. Of course, we could talk about this sort of interesting pattern where these planets will trine Chiron, square Uranus, then eventually trine Uranus, but I don't know if we want to get into that just yet. Let's see. Well, I guess just sort of going in order here. So the very next major aspect is tomorrow, August 1st, at 12:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Venus will trine Chiron. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this is when it perfects. So Venus trine Chiron is Venus, the planet of love, connecting very harmoniously with Chiron, representing the healing of wounds. And so a love of the healing of wounds, a willingness to find ways to heal, and a willingness to perhaps surrender to that. And again, like the idea of forgiveness or letting go and that sort of thing. That is again tomorrow, Venus at 5 of Leo, Chiron at 5 of Aries. Now, right after that, on August 2nd, Venus will square Uranus. And so Venus square Uranus, now there's some tension in the air. Now it's like, oh, I want things that maybe I shouldn't want, or like I can't have, or I know that maybe I could have, but I shouldn't have, but I want it anyway, wanting things that are Uranian, perhaps, wanting things that are out of the ordinary, unique, different. It can also, I believe anyway, just from what I've sort of seen over the years, Venus in a square with Uranus can be like sort of sudden developments in the area of love, perhaps also money, perhaps also just social life in general, and often in a way that like presents problems or sort of shakes things up, basically. So, it should be interesting to see how that manifests in various people's lives. Let's see. Of course, we just had 2 days ago the Sun square Uranus, and so when that day happened, I told people to expect the unexpected, and indeed, I remember that was just a weird day with all kinds of unexpected occurrences. So we can sort of expect similar energy to that again in just 2 more days, August 2nd. And again, that perfects at 6 a.m. Eastern time that day, but it'll be with us for the entire day, or we'll feel it the entire day. All right, so let's see. Where should we go next? I want to skip ahead a bit, I think, at this point, rather than talking about all these other aspects one by one, which maybe we can do after a bit, and talk about the full moon in the month of August, which I should have the exact time for here. Hang on a second. Where the hell is it? Okay, maybe I don't have the time for it. All right, then we'll just have to do this the hard way. 1 moment, please. Okay, there it is. I thought that's the time that it was, but I wanted to make sure. August 15th at 8:30 a.m., there is a full moon in Aquarius. So this full moon is very interesting because first of all, it's conjunct Venus. Like the sun part of the full moon is conjunct Venus. We got the sun in Leo opposite the moon in Aquarius, and the sun in Leo is conjunct Venus. And so there's an element of love and social life and harmony infused into this full moon. So expect it to have something to do with that, essentially. But there's also, of course, with it being in Aquarius, this sort of dichotomy of like the love for all of humanity, the conceptual idea of love, or just plain the idea of love itself. Love not in the personal sense, which Leo is all about, but the intellectual or conceptual sense, which Aquarius is all about. But The whole idea, of course, with a full moon, sun opposite the moon, is that we're going to see the dynamic interplay between the two. In other words, this full moon will be about personal love versus conceptual or idealistic love. It'll be about love on an individual, like one-to-one basis, versus love for everyone, love for all of humanity, stuff like that. So I think that will be very interesting. Remember, as always, full moon, that is when the energy peaks. That is when the lunar cycle culminates, and things tend to happen on the full moon. So again, that perfects August 15th, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So mark your calendars accordingly. Let's see, what should we go to next? Hang on. Oh, geez, I just realized it's already 9:37 p.m. I probably need to wrap this stream up relatively soon, but I think we can cover a bit more before I do that. All right, let's see. Again, I apologize if I seem a bit off tonight. If I seem a bit off tonight, it's because I am off tonight. So there you go. Which, can we talk about this for a moment? Because that's kind of funny to me. It's like, why does it always seem to be the days that I have to stream that the universe picks to sort of present like unusual challenges to me that then throw me off, especially on a day like this. Like, this is probably one of the most fun kinds of streams that I do, is doing tarot readings and talking about the current astrology, especially, I don't know, I guess the astrology part is really, really fun to me. As much I absolutely love doing tarot readings too. That's super fun. But like, astrology is like off the charts for me. It's like, why does the universe have to pick the one day that I talk about like my favorite subject to sort of fuck with me and make it like, a lot harder to enjoy? It's like, what the hell is this? Why couldn't that have happened on Thursday or Tuesday? Why does it have to be Wednesday when I go to do my tarot and astrology stream? But, whatever. It is what it is, I suppose. Or maybe that's just a coping mechanism. Who knows? Anyway, so another aspect coming up is Mars quincunxing Pluto. Now we're just sort of going back in order here as we were before. That perfects August 4th at 11:58 a.m. Eastern Time. So Mars quincunx Pluto. That, in my strongest astrological theory, is like wanting to do stuff, wanting to act, wanting to push forward, but there's some frustrating component that is very powerful, very sort of beyond normal reach, that is making it difficult for one to act and push forward and do what you want to do, essentially. Which I guess now might be a good time to discuss this interesting patterning that we see this month, and which is like in many ways quite unusual, because again, the inner planets are traveling basically together this month, and this was illustrated exceptionally well in Rick Levine's August 2019 astrology forecast here on YouTube. I've recommended his stuff before, and while I'm recommending it again, if you really want to, see this fleshed out more, where he talked about this idea of, because the planets are, moving more or less together and through Leo and then into Virgo, one by one this month, they're going to trine Jupiter, bringing a lot of optimism and like, oh, we can do it and stuff like that. Then quincunx Saturn, which then brings like limitations and difficulties and, oh, like I want to do it, but I can't. And then quincunx Neptune, which adds an element of confusion or illusion or delusion to the mix. So like most months or most any given periods of time, we don't have this kind of like one after another pattern. But this month we do. So in the weeks ahead, I would say expect to see like recurring themes one after another, and we've already had the first of it actually with the Mars trying to Jupiter, which we had about a week ago now. So we've already had that. And then, of course, Mars quincunx Saturn, and then quincunx Neptune just a day ago, as we went over, and is about to quincunx Pluto also. And so, well, that's part of the patterning as well. But then we can also take it a step further and see how right around the beginning of August and end of July, we've got these various planets squaring Uranus, as we talked a little bit about already, and trining Chiron. But then as we get more towards the end of August, as I'm sort of moving forward here in the astrology window, we will then have those same planets trining Uranus and then quincunxing Chiron. So there's a pattern there as well. There's a pattern from the Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune side of things, and then there's a pattern from the Uranus and then Chiron side of things. So it's very interesting. And obviously, if we had hours, or if I had hours, I guess I could dive into these one by one and try to get into the minutia of them. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of time or energy or even probably mental and emotional stability at this point. So we can't do that, but just suffice to say, there is that patterning going on. But one really interesting part of this, though, that I will mention is that when we have, as I mentioned, the planets right around the end of this month, July, and early next month, August, squaring Uranus, and then around the end of August, trining Uranus. One theory about that is that may very well be that the changes that felt very difficult to manifest around late July, early August, then become very easy to manifest around the end of August, when we no longer have squares to Uranus, but instead smooth, harmonious trines to Uranus. So basically, if things seem frustrating as hell right now, just give it a month. So I think that's probably one of the most key things for the current and upcoming astrology, in fact. All right, let's see what else. What else do we have here? What we have here is a complete and total mutiny of the senses. Seeing if I can pull up some additional relevant information, but no, not really. All right, well, I would love to dive into more of the astrology and greater specifics, but I just need to go eat soon. It's getting very close to that time, and I do have a little bit more time, or I could make a little bit more time, but we wouldn't have time to really get deep into anything. So I think this is probably a good place to wrap things up. So I apologize for the shorter stream tonight. Like I said, I've been feeling completely off, so that's an issue. But we were at least able to go over, I would say, some of the most important current and upcoming astrological data and events. And I'm sure we can go over more next time that we do something like this, which will probably be in, I don't know, let me look at my calendar. I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if it was about 2 weeks from now, right around the time of the full moon. So yeah. Now I feel like I was going to say something and I forget what the hell it was. Damn it, no, what was it? Oh, just that. Again, it's so funny to me that the universe has to pick like the one day that I'm doing, something that I really, really like to do, talking about the current astrology, to make things extra difficult for me because I'm not kidding you guys. While I still have a lot of issues I deal with in terms of like my own stability, I can at least keep myself stable for like weeks at a time. The amount of time that I actually spend so destabilized that I can't even focus properly, and I'm not talking being like, mad or having internal issues. I'm mad all the time. I'm talking being so like unstable that I can't focus properly. The amount of time that happens anymore is very, very, very minimal because I've learned how to, I don't know, focus myself, I guess, after all these years. After years and years and years and years and years of misery and suffering, you kind of learn how to adapt to it. I guess that's a good way of putting it. You learn how to you learn how to sort of get used to it in such a way that while you still hate it, you can also still focus within it, I guess. Maybe it's a form of becoming inured to the pain. I don't know. But whereas it used to be the case where, it'd be like every other day that I felt fucking unstable. If we go back, I don't know, like 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, maybe more than that too, in some ways, that was like a very common thing for me. So yeah, again, it's just, I don't know. It's disappointing and kind of frustrating as hell, and maybe I'm ranting here a little bit, but oh well, that on the one day I get to, talk about something I really love to talk about, that's the day that the universe picks to really fuck with me, and so I don't get to fully enjoy it. Which I'm sure some people who don't know me as well would say, oh, but why don't you just do it again tomorrow? And I say, because that's part of the fucked up situation that I live in. It's physical energy levels. As a result of doing this today, I'll be extra tired tomorrow, so I have to rest tomorrow. and then the next day before having energy again, at least hopefully on Saturday, to be able to do anything like this again. There's a reason I only stream 3 days a week. If I could and had the energy, I'd probably stream 5, 6, maybe even 7 days a week. That's the reality. But anyway, enough about that. Now people are gonna call me like self-absorbed or something. My therapist called me self-absorbed. But thanks for being here nonetheless. I'm like delirious at this point. Thanks for being here and putting up with my rambling and sort of lack of stability tonight. And I'm sure I'll be back on Saturday as usual. Hang on, I'm gonna mentally and digitally check some things here real quick. Yeah, I should be back on Saturday as usual, but I don't know what kind of stream I'm doing yet. And then Monday for a Seth stream, and probably next Wednesday for more, hopefully, then more for more live tarot readings and all that. So anyway, thanks again, and have a great night, my dear viewers. Bye for now.